There is a place on Earth where you can enter the water, lie back, and simply float. You don't need to be a strong swimmer. You don't even need to try very hard. The water itself pushes your body toward the surface. But this strange place is more than a natural curiosity. It lies hundreds of meters below sea level, surrounded by one of the driest landscapes in the Middle East. For thousands of years, people have traveled here. Ancient civilizations passed through its valleys. Religious texts described its waters and surrounding lands. And hidden inside caves overlooking the lake, ancient manuscripts remained untouched for nearly 2,000 years. Yet today, something is changing. The shoreline is retreating. The landscape is opening with enormous sinkholes. And the water that once flowed into the lake has been reduced dramatically. This is the Dead Sea, a place that seems almost impossible. A sea where you cannot easily sink. A place where almost no large aquatic life can survive. And a landscape that may never look the same again. So how did this extraordinary body of water come to exist? And why is the Dead Sea slowly disappearing? To understand the answer, we have to go back millions of years. The Dead Sea lies in the Jordan Rift Valley, between Jordan to the east and Israel and the West Bank to the west. From above, it looks almost unreal. A narrow blue body of water surrounded by mountains, cliffs, desert, and vast stretches of dry land. But its most remarkable feature is not its appearance, it is its elevation. The surface of the Dead Sea lies more than 400 meters below sea level. That makes it the lowest exposed land or water surface on Earth. And this extraordinary position is closely connected to the geology beneath it. The lake lies within a massive geological depression. This depression is part of the Dead Sea Transform, a major fault system. It separates the Arabian Plate from the African Plate. For millions of years, movements deep beneath the Earth's surface have slowly shaped this region. The land shifted, mountains rose, valleys developed, and a deep basin formed between them. Water collected inside this enormous depression. But there was a problem. The Dead Sea has no outlet. Water could flow into the basin, but there was nowhere for it to flow out. Instead, the intense desert heat caused enormous amounts of water to evaporate. The minerals dissolved in that water remained behind. Year after year, century after century, the concentration increased. Salt accumulated. Minerals accumulated. And eventually, the water became extraordinarily dense and salty. But the Dead Sea was not always the same size we see today. Over geological time, the region experienced major changes in climate and water levels. Ancient lakes once occupied parts of this valley. Some were much larger than the modern Dead Sea. As the climate changed and water connections disappeared, those ancient bodies of water gradually shrank. What remained was this remarkable lake, a remnant of a much larger ancient landscape. And for thousands of years, the Dead Sea remained relatively stable. But its strange chemistry gave it another name, a name that would eventually become famous around the world: the Dead Sea. The name sounds almost ominous, but why call a lake dead? The answer is surprisingly simple. The water is extremely salty, much saltier than ordinary seawater. The concentration is so high that fish and most aquatic plants cannot survive in it. To ancient observers, the contrast was obvious. A large body of water, but almost no familiar signs of aquatic life. No schools of fish, no underwater forests, no ordinary freshwater ecosystem. It seemed dead. But the name is not entirely accurate. The Dead Sea is not completely lifeless. Some microorganisms can survive in its extreme environment. These tiny forms of life have adapted to conditions that would be fatal to most other organisms. And that is one of the most fascinating lessons of the Dead Sea. Even in an environment that appears completely hostile, life can adapt. But the most extraordinary stories surrounding the Dead Sea are not found in its water. They are hidden in the desert cliffs. In 1947, a discovery was made near the ancient settlement of Qumran. A Bedouin shepherd entered a cave and found ancient scrolls stored inside clay jars. At first, the importance of the discovery was not fully understood. But as more caves were investigated, archaeologists uncovered thousands of fragments belonging to hundreds of ancient manuscripts. They became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some contained biblical texts. Others contained religious writings, community rules, interpretations, and documents that revealed details about ancient Jewish life and beliefs. The manuscripts had survived for nearly 2,000 years. Think about that for a moment. Empires had risen and fallen. Languages had changed. Cities had disappeared. Generations had lived and died. And yet these fragile pieces of parchment remained hidden inside the desert. The environment that seems so harsh today had helped preserve them. The caves became a kind of ancient time capsule. And suddenly, the Dead Sea was no longer simply a strange lake. It had become one of the most important archaeological landscapes in the world. But there was another mystery waiting in the water itself. Why can people float so easily here? If you have ever seen photographs of the Dead Sea, you may have noticed something unusual. People are not swimming. They are floating. Some sit upright on the surface. Others lie back as if they were resting on an invisible platform. And remarkably, the water really does help hold them up. The explanation comes down to density. The Dead Sea contains an exceptionally high concentration of dissolved salts and minerals. Over thousands of years, evaporation removed enormous quantities of water, but the minerals remained. The result is water that is much denser than ordinary seawater. When a person enters the lake, the dense water produces a powerful buoyant force. In simple terms, the water pushes upward against the body. That is why a person can float with surprisingly little effort. But floating does not mean the water is harmless. Getting the water into your eyes or mouth can be extremely painful. Open cuts or wounds can make the experience even worse. And because the water is so buoyant, ordinary swimming can actually feel awkward. The Dead Sea is therefore one of those rare places where the laws of physics become something you can feel with your own body. But perhaps the most beautiful part of the Dead Sea is not what happens to people in the water. It is what happens to the landscape around it. Along the shoreline, salt gathers around rocks and forms strange white patterns. Crystals grow where the water evaporates. Some areas appear almost frozen. But they are not covered in ice. They are covered in minerals. The contrast can be extraordinary. Bright white salt, turquoise water, brown mountains, golden desert. Under the right light, the entire landscape can look almost otherworldly. And this is one of the reasons the Dead Sea has become such a famous destination. People come here to experience the unusual water, to cover themselves in mineral-rich mud, to photograph the salt formations, and simply to stand in a landscape unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. But there is something unsettling about these beautiful views. The shoreline is moving, and it is moving in the wrong direction. For thousands of years, the Dead Sea existed within a natural balance. Water entered the basin, evaporation removed water, and the lake remained. But over the last century, that balance has changed dramatically. The Jordan River and other sources that once supplied much more water to the Dead Sea have been heavily diverted for human use. Water is needed for agriculture. Cities need drinking water. Industries need water. And the countries of the region face enormous pressure on their limited freshwater resources. At the same time, the desert continues to do what it has always done. Water evaporates. The result is simple. Less water enters the Dead Sea while evaporation continues. The water level falls, the shoreline retreats, and areas that were once underwater are exposed. But the consequences go far beyond a shrinking beach. As the lake retreats, dangerous sinkholes can develop around parts of the shoreline. These holes can appear when fresh water enters underground layers of salt that were previously protected by the lake. The salt dissolves. Empty spaces develop beneath the surface, and eventually the ground above can collapse. Some sinkholes are small. Others can become enormous. Roads, buildings, beaches, and agricultural areas can all be placed at risk. The landscape around the Dead Sea is literally being rewritten. And that raises a difficult question. Can the Dead Sea be saved? For decades, governments, scientists, and environmental organizations have debated possible solutions. One of the most ambitious ideas has involved transferring water from the Red Sea toward the Dead Sea. The concept sounds simple. Use desalination to provide fresh water for people in the region, and potentially send some of the remaining water toward the shrinking lake. But the Dead Sea is not an ordinary lake. Its chemistry is highly unusual. Introducing large amounts of different water could change that chemistry. Scientists have debated what effects such a change might have on the lake's unique environment. And there is another problem. Water is already scarce throughout the region. Millions of people depend on the same rivers and aquifers. Farmers need water, cities need water, and neighboring countries have competing demands. So saving the Dead Sea is not simply an engineering problem. It is a problem of cooperation, water management, economics, politics, and climate. The future of this ancient lake may depend on decisions made far beyond its shoreline. And that is what makes the Dead Sea story so important. It is not only about one lake. It is about how quickly human activity can alter a landscape that took millions of years to form. From a distance, the Dead Sea can still look timeless. Blue water stretches between the mountains. Salt glitters along the shoreline. The desert remains almost completely silent. It is easy to imagine that this landscape will still look the same hundreds of years from now. But landscapes are not permanent. Rivers change, climate changes, water levels rise and fall. And sometimes a place that has survived for thousands of years can be transformed within a single human lifetime. The Dead Sea has witnessed civilizations rise and disappear. It has preserved ancient writings inside desert caves. It has become famous for its extraordinary buoyancy, and it has created one of the most unusual landscapes on Earth. But today, it is also sending us a warning. Because the Dead Sea is not simply a place where you cannot sink. It is a place that reminds us that even something that has survived for thousands of years can still disappear. Perhaps that is the strangest thing about the Dead Sea. Not that it is so salty, not that people can float in it, not even that ancient manuscripts survived inside caves beside it, but that this ancient landscape is still changing, and its story is far from over.